Right, the moment you've all been waiting for, an opportunity for you to ask questions of this esteemed panel. I'll start the ball rolling though, and it's a question really which arises from the earlier discussions under the heading of responsibility, and obviously I'd like to hear Jeffrey's view on this as well. One of the problems we had with the Iran Tribunal was engaging or attempting to engage the United Nations with mixed and depressing results. I wonder whether I could have the views from each three members of the panel as to the difficulties in obtaining and getting responsibility from those who should take it. And perhaps I'll start with Pierre as to my right on that.
Well, I will say that for me, between what we appeal popular tribunal, popular initiative under the symbolic vision of a kind of tribunal, it's a way to mobilize citizens and to mobilize people to understand better what is a reality and how the citizen can act after that. So that my first impression is that, see, it's an instrument for mobilization, to make sure that you can have popular support for what you believe or people are believing it's important in this way. And it's clearly also, and I tell it during my intervention, it's an instrument to give the people the legitimacy of their action, to restore the legitimacy of what we appeal to civil society. And thirdly, it can be also, and it was all the time in the intention, it's how to help to make progress in what we appeal the international law. So that there are different objectives. And in your intervention, if I have good understand, you say after this initiative, this popular initiative, there must be an international official one. And I agreed with that. Why not? Because we must have vision for the future for the international community. But the objective of the two are not exactly the same. And during the preparation of the Russell Tribunal, we pay a lot of attention how to have a large committee of pattern. And we have more than 100 international personalities. Even Boutros Ghali was a member of pattern committee, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, former very important personality in the cultural world, in the political world, in the social world. After that, what we do, it was to implement national committee of support for the tribunal. We built in each country a committee of support. And we try to help them how to build this committee with the experience of the People's Tribunal. And it was very important because it's by this way that we collect the money. It was by this way that we received the support of ordinary people giving us money to implement the Russell Tribunal. And at least, I must honestly tell you that it's 40 years that I am working on the Palestinian question. It's 40 years that I am investing I chair today the European Coordination Committee of NGO and committees for Palestine, okay? And we meet us each 3 months, and the Russell Tribunal was on the agenda of this committee, working in 20 different European countries. So that it was a demand from it was a kind of demand coming from the civil society too, you see. And I was looking on the situation saying, what can we still do after so many years that we are in solidarity with the Palestinians, that we work with them, and we observe that, in fact, they don't reach what they hope, the self-determination. And there was the 93 agreement of Oslo, and after that, nothing. And so that we try to see, can the international law help the Palestinians to safeguard their international law rights, their international rights, to be seen as a people, to be seen as a nation, to be seen as people having the right to be in the international community, in the UN. And I don't say that we help the people to go to the UNESCO, but it's true. We help the Palestinians to go to UNESCO. And in the UNESCO, because people there, they are more interested by the cultural aspect of the reality in the world, it was the first way that we obtained the recognition of the Palestinian state, you see? And that was very important because it was the entry in the UN system. And it's the reason why the Palestinians do it, and it was very well done. But it was a little, we discussed it with the Palestinians, this way to do it. And now, I believe that also to have a Russell Tribunal or a people tribunal, we thought to have in mind that it's to build together a new way to work with the citizen. We lose a part of our time. You see, I will tell you honestly, I observed this society now from a lot of years. I start to work for Oxfam, a British organization in Belgium. But we take the model of Oxfam and we build an Oxfam in Belgium, and we fight Oxfam, in fact, because Oxfam was so conservative, and we try to support the liberation movement all over the world. So they were very disturbed by us. But it was like that, and we do it. It gave me a good opportunity to observe what happened in the world. And what happened? During one part of the last century, we can join the struggle of the people because the people was struggling. In our country, the social movement, the women in the colonial country by the emancipation movement, and there was movement. And what happened at the end of the century is that we start to move from the support with movement and we go to a kind of lobby system. And the tribunal was one part of this lobby system. But the lobby system, we lost the link with the movement. We as intellectuals, we as very engaged people, we make our duty.
I didn't mean to cut you short, but obviously I'm trying to have time for other questions as well and other answers. But thank you, that's very wide-ranging. Jeffrey, on the subject of responsibility.
Very quickly, I think Michael gave us a good example of the general problem and its solution. Because they'd become powerful, they were able to get a hearing before a committee they would not otherwise have got. Now, in the case of North Korea, I don't know, but it may well be because there were around the world just too many organizations beginning to attack the UN for doing nothing. The UN caved in to the extent of saying, all right, you can have the next step, hoping maybe that they wouldn't have to take the one after that, which is to refer to the ICC. And if you then step back and look at the problem in general and the solution we attempt in general, we are in fact all facing national or international governments that don't do their job. And we're attacking them individually at different places. And we have to recognize that to attack, you need not dispirited people, like the people might have been in the Seoul conference, if they stayed committed to something they didn't get. That you have somehow, event by event, activity by activity, to generate the enthusiasm of your supporters who are activists with either a single objective or deliverable objectives that will keep them going for a long period of their life or for all their lives. We are not here, we're not born to spend our life as activists. We are born to eat, drink, reproduce, enjoy ourselves, play music, and sometimes to do other things. And the question is how you manage to harness that potential bit in order to carry on the attack.
Mike, you mentioned the reaction of the international community, including the UN, to a number of your initiatives. Could you develop that as to how the international community react to people's tribunals and how we can maybe get more out of them?
Well, it depends on which part of the world you're in. For example, South America, I don't want to sort of do a blanket form, but South American countries, certainly on the committee we addressed at the United Nations, were totally supportive. And therefore, you're getting good feedback, and they will carry that message on. There are a lot of other places, the United Kingdom's one of them, where there is apathy, where they sit on the fence. So obviously we've got a big job there to convince them to move. However, the real point about I want to say is, it isn't a legal problem, it's a political one. And the legal framework is there. That battle, in a sense, has been won both, at the stage of the League of Nations and then the United Nations and all the conventions. You only have to, look at an international law book. There's stacks of stuff out there with principles, precedents, and all the rest of it. We're not short of, in other words, a legal framework. What we're short of are people prepared to implement that. Now, what the People's Tribunals are doing, international ones anyway, is to, that's why the answer to the question that Jeffrey posed was, is getting inspiration to those countries where there is a growing feeling from within those countries that they're being outflanked by the 5 major ones, and to isolate the 5 major ones. And that's why the importance of the People's Tribunal getting recognition is to actually, it's an act of solidarity with all those countries who feel they haven't had a voice. And that's why, the Security Council, there has to be change. In fact, the General Secretary himself has said that. They're now getting the message. It's been entrenched in a situation which is post-Second World War. We're living in the past. Of course, the Americans love it because it gives them ultimate control over what gets through and what doesn't get through, which is why the Security Council has the power to refer a case to the International Criminal Court. And of course, they won't when it comes to Israel or other areas of the world. It's not just Israel. So I think it's a political question that we have to see ourselves as political animals, with a small p, pushing the legal agenda so that they are faced with accountability. That's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing in the European Parliament. You have a responsibility. They won, and I think I put it in the speech to them. The European Parliament won, the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2012. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. And I said, what are you all doing about it, other than resting on that laurel? That's no good. I'm sorry, there are thousands of people by the day dying, being incarcerated, being tortured, just as it is in Iran. So that's the political question. One is getting it onto the mainstream agenda through organizations like Russell, but lots of others as well. The final point I just want to make is, I'm not unaware that even if you get a case to the ICC, you have another political job to do. The prosecutors, I'm afraid to say, with this excluded, the prosecutors, particularly American ones, are politically driven. And what happens is, and I had it in another case altogether, and I've got it at the moment, Morsi, Egypt, and what's been going on there. Very interesting. There's a clear case of an illegality that has been committed by the present regime. But trying to get the prosecutor to act, impossible so far. There are lots of representations going on. The battle is not over by any means. So they know, unlike the past, when there would have been silence from the world community on the whole, it's the Americans again behind the scenes. But what the prosecutors now know is that they're not going to be allowed to just stay silent. They're going to have to justify their decisions for inaction, because there are groups saying, through representatives like myself, I want to know why it is you're not doing this, and I want it in writing. That sort of approach. They don't like that. And they delay and they obfuscate, but basically we come back. You have to have greater persistence than they do. So that's how I engage.
Very helpful. All right, I'm looking for hands, and if you could identify yourselves. You don't need to identify yourself, I'm sure. I've got the gentleman second at the back there, but yes.
I just picked up right there on what Michael just said, but coming back, I'm not trying to, but coming back to what Sir Geoffrey said about setting up a more permanent body, I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect just about everybody in this room varies in the political spectrum from left of centre to radical left. And the moment you set up that more permanent body, as opposed to the PPT, which can control what cases it takes, because it's going to search for funding and it's really going to deal with people, what stops people from the right coming and using this mechanism that you see as useful for you, trying to push other causes? And we've seen that whether it's in Canada, with the use of the Charter of Rights, here in the UK, in the US, you get corporations, you get other people using what people perceived as of the rights of individuals to pursue their own corporate interests. So how do you get funding and create something that on its face looks neutral, but then keeps out the groups that you don't have an interest in actually protecting?
Jeffrey, that's for you, I think.
Well, I think it's a point I made myself right at the beginning. You can't, if you have such a system, and I'm not advocating it in any concrete terms at the moment, but if you have it, it's vulnerable to all those sorts of initial objections and to those practical difficulties. I think there's one more, that if you have any kind of official body, that you might discourage the people who are in this room and all others like us who would give their time free. On the other hand, we are in the position where a range of different people's tribunals have a range of results that is not representative of the gravity of the underlying problem. And somehow we should be looking at addressing and considering what solution there may be for the unrepresented, whether it's the Rohingyas or was the North Koreans, or indeed the Iranians, who can only work through informal mechanisms. So I did say the back of your mind or the side of your mind for forward thinking. And I think it is worth discussion, but it's certainly very problematic.
I think one of the issues we had on the Iran tribunal, and it was quite a controversial debate we had to limit ourselves to a certain set period of time. And a lot of victims and people who were sorely treated and bereaved families would say, well, why not us? Why not a year before? Why not a year after? And that all boiled down for us to practical, pragmatic decisions that had to be made because of funding and organisation. But even within a people's tribunal, there can be people who feel disenfranchised. And we were acutely aware of that when we were steering this process. But thank you. Gentleman at the back, please. Could you identify yourself again for those that don't know you?
Yeah, I'm Abbas Mandegar. My partner and I are on a visit here, and we learned about this. I thought we should come in.
Welcome.
And express our feeling. And thank you so much for doing this, because it is getting the attention. We had more than one meetings, gatherings, huge gatherings in Vancouver, British Columbia, in support of this tribunal. And it brought a lot of inspiration and hope. I am sure, as much as we cry with the people following, the testimonies, but it also brings a lot of hope for the future. I think you're on a right track, and I'm sure it happens in other countries that you're working on. So go ahead, go forward, do it. Hopefully the people can push their will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We appreciate that. Yes.
Sorry to come back again. I think that, however, I take 2 points which appear to me rather less new, and in the scenario of People's Tribunal or Opinion Tribunal. Over the last 2 or 3 years, there has been a growing awareness of the necessity of establishing networks of the tribunal, just to communicate among different approaches, because so far, everybody was going its own way, as if that was something which was really a kind of, say, fragmented effort of activism, because that's part of the game. Now, I think that there has been a growing disappointment with what Michael was saying, the international and national law, because there is a disregard, systematic disregard of anything which has to do with legality. So the decisions are taken outside a legal process, both for political reasons, economic reasons. The case of Lewisham was voted this morning was a typical situation. I was aware of that because I work in the medical field and Lancer was talking about that. But it's a very model case of everything which is happening. So they are violating, without saying, not recognizing, they are violating the right of consultation. If you take all decisions which are taken in the third world, so-called, or in our Europe, in our countries, about environmental issues, which are devastating systematically here and there, mining, something like that, they are taken exactly with the same criteria. No consultation at all, and there are not chance of that. So now, I think since those things are recognized, I think one major effort now would be at least to make these meetings here something a kind of very flexible, permanent instrument, so that at least what was happening with the Palestine Tribunal and the people just to communicate, to compare, not to unify the approaches, because the approach must be very different, because the cases are so different, and the peoples who are asking for the tribunal are so different. But if we, in waiting for dreams and for what you are saying for Holland, at least to establish a way of, say, standard communication among ourselves, among different groups, because also, and I close on that, but I think that is important, because Michael was saying just you vitalize the international community on Israel. I think there is also a challenge of vitalizing a bit the international lawyers. I think that those issues are very rarely discussed in the official circles or in teaching or something. These public opinion tribunal, people are quoted here and there by different authors, Michael Kirby or Richard Falkenstein, but like I say, of interesting experiences, not just as they document a systematic failure of international law as it is now, because this is very set out, and I agree that there is no need of many more treaties. But the way of interpreting those treaties in the new conditions are very lacking. And I think that would be interesting to make an effort to maintain this coordination.
I mean, I'll bring other people. I was having a conversation with Andrew Byrne yesterday about this, and precisely about what you said, and so there are like minds thinking about it. When you mentioned a moment ago waiting for Holland, it brought to mind the play Waiting for Godot, and we don't particularly want to end up in the same position. Pierre, though, on that suggestion of communication, for want of a better expression, do you have a view? As you're a double act, you know.
No, honestly speaking, I was believing that after the 5 years that we implement the Russell Tribunal, that we bring this as a contribution for to restore the right of the Palestinian people, that we will have make our duty. And now today I observe that we must have this extraordinary session in last September, and we know that the story is not finished, so that, yes, we are interested to exchange, and not only because we believe that it's important to exchange, but I believe that there are links between the different procedures. You make this interesting effort, we make another one. Now let us work to know how we can reinforce the process, and maybe then you will be right that it can be the base for something that would be tomorrow, the way that in the world we can have maybe the restoration of our international law by a tribunal in charge of, and so and so. That would be the next of the UN system, a contribution, an important contribution.
Jeffrey, anything to add? Michael, Jeffrey, what have you?
Sorry, I can Michael first. No.
No, I mean, I think the communications point is a particularly important one, but just to give you an example, I mean, Pierre mentioned it, that is interpreting laws and perhaps adding to them. The sociocide issue is an important one. I don't deny the concept. And we had this debate, it was quite a genuine debate within the Russell Tribunal of the extent to which one tries to push legal boundaries and get sociocide recognised as a potential crime. Now, I was actually against that because we already have a definition which is one step beyond it, which led us to the last Russell Tribunal, which was genocide. So my argument was we have enough difficulty getting the present concepts implemented, let alone introducing new ones. I'm not saying the new ones may not help progress the argument, but one has to be very careful about introducing new concepts because those who are opposed to what we're doing absolutely love the idea that you can fragment the argument in this way. So I'm concerned about doing that. I'm much more concerned about the judgments that exist. I mean, the good example is the wall, which has been mentioned both by Pierre and by myself, and I normally carry it, and perhaps a pity I didn't have it here today. You only have to read it. I know I say this to lay audiences. Go and read it. It reads like a book. It's easy to read. They've spelt it out in words of one syllable. And so what I say is concentrate on what we have in the bag already and get the people who should be implementing it to do something about that. Now, on the genocide front, it is an extremely important issue. Now, even if you can literally and technically say that, so far as Israel is concerned, it hasn't quite committed the genocide as defined, it depends how you interpret it. And we had a lawyer give evidence on the last session who said there are two schools of thought. We have to be familiar with what the schools of thought are about how you define the widespread or non-widespread nature of it, what is part of a community or part of a race or part of a nation. Is it one person? Can it be 10, 15, 20? You have debates about all that. We need to know what those debates are. So in fact what happened was that the tribunal said, well, what has happened over the summer is incitement to genocide. So it's just on the cusp. And what the tribunal was saying is there's no question about that next time. It will almost certainly spill over into the definition. But I think we have to know what the definition, all of us, we have, it seems to me, an obligation, all of us, to be familiar with what the definitions are. Because the spokespeople for oppressive regimes, and I don't just mean Israel, but lots of other ones, get away with murder. And you have on all your media, in my view, a paucity of informed interrogation, informed presenters. They know nothing. They are given a last-minute brief and they say, so what do you say about this? And people are given a free hand to say exactly what they want. Instead of the presenters, us, the public, saying, excuse me, the definition is X. And so somebody wants to come back on that, that's fine. But so I'm very concerned to ensure that what is already out there is known. Jeffrey.
3 rapid points. We've heard about environment and the hospital. Ask yourself a question. If all people's tribunals happened to be focused on correcting governments and international bodies that did not deal with violations of human rights in conflicts, of armed conflicts of one kind or another, would they as a collective have a greater momentum in the world than the range of tribunals that we actually have? I'm not suggesting we should change the reality. I'm just asking the question as we look at how things become effective. Second, if there is a right or even a duty to take arms in the form of pens and computers against government and international bodies when they fail in respect of human rights violations, should it be taught in schools and at universities? It isn't. Should it be a codified entitlement of the citizen? Fanciful idea, think about it. Third, it's a real pleasure to see so many familiar faces here today. But should I be? Shouldn't I be addressing a room full of strangers?
We'll come on to social media in a minute, which I want to discuss. But I've got a plethora of people. In fact, I've got about 8 people now that have indicated, so bear with me. Yes. Just identify yourself for those that may not know you. I have seen everyone, by the way. I'm just doing it in order I saw you.
I'm Tahir Danish, and I work as a human rights researcher, and my specialization is actually human rights education. I want to focus specifically on Iran. In my daily work, I deal with individuals contacting me from Iran who know absolutely nothing about their rights, but are being wronged on a constantly, on a regular basis. The Iran Tribunal was a very important process for us. One that I think created a new platform in terms of legal advancement. But in terms of education of Iranians, I'm not quite sure what it achieved. So going back to the point that you raised, I'm wondering how we could take the final judgment, the process that led to Iran Tribunal, and how could we turn it into an educational process for Iranians in Iran? I want to see change at the grassroots level. And much of what we're addressing is actually affecting the grass tops, if at all. In the world of education, we're dealing with edutainment at the moment. Iranians will not pick this up to read it. I can guarantee it, Iranians here or in Iran. We're the Twitter generation, 140 characters and that's it. We can't go beyond that, it's too much for us. Manoto television, which was referred to earlier during this process, has been able to attract the younger population in Iran. And those are the people that are going to set up the next tribunals. Those are the individuals that are going to bring about some sort of justice. I would like to know if Iran Tribunal management is open to the idea of taking what you have achieved and turn it into edutainment.
Jeffrey, it's got to be for you.
I didn't hear the last bit. Are you interested in what?
Could you just repeat the last sentence?
How could we take what you have achieved through Iran Tribunal and turn it into edutainment? Edutainment. No. Edutainment is entertainment that actually teaches values. I'll give you an example. In India, we had to eradicate polio. UNICEF was concerned with eradication of polio. So they've done all sorts of education processes. It hasn't worked. So they created a soap opera because everyone in India at 8 o'clock turns everything else off and watches soap operas. The soap opera they created actually helped to eliminate polio. So that's what I'm interested in. Could we do something like that? Could we create an educational process that affects people?
Okay, I've got the point, and I think the answer is more likely to come from the informed audience who will know what would be culturally persuasive in Iran, if that's where you want the education to be. If you want the education to be of the broader public about the value of these tribunals generally, then it has to be probably a feature-length film, which may or may not have effect, and it's got to have a satisfactory outcome. But I think Michael may have an idea.
Well, we face this problem in another area. I was going to mention it a minute ago. I don't know how many people here, this will prove the value of what we did probably. How many people here are familiar with this music?
you wanted entertainment and education. Mike Mansfield is now going to wrap his answer.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it. Yeah. We had this problem with another area altogether. The word is ecocide. How many here are familiar with that term? Oh, that's interesting. Hardly anybody. Well, we obviously didn't achieve it then, did we? But within the United Kingdom, it's rather like sociocide, but there's been a movement for a long time to put ecocide was going to be the 5th crime against the peace. It was taken off the agenda for the Treaty of Rome at the last minute by 2 nations, that's the United Kingdom and the US, saying we don't want that on. Why? Because they would end up in the dock in relation to oil companies desecrating the world. That's what it's all about. It's about devastation, environmental devastation. So there's one particular lawyer, Polly Higgins is her name, who's been campaigning to get that put back on the agenda and made the 5th crime. And she goes around the world persuading governments to put it back there. However, we were aware that very few people knew much about it or what it meant. So what we did as a kind of education entertainment, and I thought it's a bit like Iran did in The Hague, is you hire the top court, essentially, and you put, what we did is we put a mock trial on in the Supreme Court, the new Supreme Court in Parliament Square. And what happened was, it was open to the public. It was flooded with people who were not the familiar faces. The familiar faces were there. And then the trial is now, it's on YouTube, you can watch it. And it was just a way of bringing alive. We put on trial an oil company in relation to what had been happening down in the Gulf of Mexico and the oil spill. So we based it on a true case, and we based it on tar sands in Canada. So there were two cases. We obviously fictionalized a bit of it, and we put people in the dock, we prosecuted, but it was to show how it can work, because that people say, oh, how does it work at the end of the day? That provided a form of education. It's obviously been limited because that was 4 years ago, people forget. So you have to do it all the time, you have to reinvent it, do something new. That's for the UK. I'm sure in Iran it'll be a different...
Can I just say, I think I've got approximately 10 indications and I've got 10 minutes. So that probably tells you where we're going. I'm sure we can run over a little, but... I could certainly do that. I think I'll do it in 3 in a go, and then we'll do them in 3 chunks. The gentleman at the back there. Just with if you could try, all of you, just keep the questions short so we can give them the courtesy of dealing with them.
Thank you. I'm Namdar Bagai Yazdi. I'm a research scientist, and I can call myself and my family as one of the early victims of the Islamic Republic in Iran. I attended the Iran Tribunal in London when it happened, and it was shocking, really, for me, and to see the extent of that. But seeing what has happened in the last couple of years now, especially with the visit of the parliamentary delegation from Britain to Iran, Jack Straw, Mr. Lamont, Lord Lamont, and Jeremy Corbyn, and the other gentleman, I forgot, 4 of them. When they came back, Norman Lamont was talking, giving a talk, and he was talking about how we should resume business with Iran, how Iran has to become a, better country, and he was not at all talking about human rights. Even a couple of questions about human rights.
Get your question if you can, because I've got about 10 people.
How can you change the political will of the countries, especially major countries of the world, to take something like Iran Tribunal seriously and take
the political will of what country? Any
United
country?
Kingdom, America,
international.
International.
Okay, I've got that one.
Ones.
That's one. The gentleman in the blue, please. There.
One of the main problems that we see is that legal system in each country is more linked towards the powerful and the rich. And what we see in Iran is that you can even buy your lashes, you can buy your sentence or imprisonment if you have enough money. If you don't, the same happens in the United States and other countries. We need a legal system or a legal community to help people like yourselves. An organization like Medicine Sans Frontières, in Lawyers Without Borders. Do we have such things? And another shortcoming that I see is that all these efforts in people tribunals and so on, we don't have enough media coverage and publicity, or we don't have enough connection between all these.
Okay, so it's communicating what's going on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the plan for?
Got that. I've got that. And finally, the lady in the red, if I can. Again, if you could just try and phrase your question as quickly as you can, so we can give you the answers you deserve.
My name is Valdênia, I'm from Brazil. I have 2 questions. First, the People Tribunal can treat cases that involve private companies that violate the human rights as co-actor with the government. Second, UN is a important system, legal system, but is very elite.
Yeah.
The People Tribunal can help the UN more popular.
Right. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I've deliberately taken 3 questions, but I'm going to give each member of the panel one of those questions. Pierre, perhaps I could ask you to deal with international political will, that question. Again, if I can ask everyone, as short as possible, please.
As short as possible. It's your question. I will say what we do in our activities with the Russell Tribunal or with our action when we speak about the situation in Palestine is to go to the politicians, to present them their incoherence, to say, you proclaim your human rights, you proclaim humanitarian rights, international rights, and you tell it to the other country, but what are you doing when it's your turn to be in conformity with? And that's the work that we can do, and I believe to doing that, we will implement our capacity to force them to be coherent.
Can I say these questions can no doubt continue over lunch, so grab everyone. Mike, perhaps I could ask you to deal with what I call coordination, the gentleman in the blue question.
Yes, I'm just giving you a model answer to this quickly. It relates to Palestine, but it can relate to Iran as well. There is an organization called the Lawyers for Palestinian Human Rights. It's a group of us who've got together over the last 5 years. We've raised enormous sums of money, mostly behind the scenes. There's not a lot of publicity, but the organization is there. And what we do with the money is to fund legal actions because we're recognized people on the ground haven't got the money. They haven't even got the buildings, never mind the money. So that is happening on a daily basis, that groups of Palestinians are being given, as it were, an insight as to what actions they can take, where they can take them, and we'll help fund it. And that should happen in Iran.
Thanks, Mike. Jeffrey, the lady in the red, UN.
I heard the second part of your question, madam, not the first part, but I think you were talking about the unpopularity and lack of success of the UN legal system. Many people would say the time has long passed for UN judicial posts and the prosecutor posts of the tribunals to be voted on. Other countries know that you get probably better judges by having independent commissions that operate according to criteria and go for the best, most neutral judge. Their salaries have to be brought down quite seriously. Too many of them regard their jobs as sinecures in which they will sit and fester for as long as they can. We need practical judges who don't want to sit in silly clothes in fancy courts, but are willing to go around the world and take evidence on commission. And something I said to the judges in the Yugoslav case, if you want to be credible, go out and take evidence on commission and get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and work until 9 at night in an ordinary suit and let the people come in and watch you. That's what we need as one of the ways to improve the UN's pretty appalling system.
We've been granted extra time by the referee, so that's good. Now I'm going to take another batch of 3, and Pam, you're number 4, and with your customary succinct question, it'll come now, sure. Pam.
Well, we in civil society complain about the world of power politics. We complain about political selectivity, exclusion of certain voices, and monopolization of the discourse. I want to turn the mirror and look at ourselves and ask whether we ourselves don't replicate the same issue. So, for example, Gaza, yes. Why not mass murder of 200,000 people by Assad? Why not murder of 200,000 Kurds, gassing of 200,000 Kurds by Saddam Hussein, 500,000 people in Darfur? So, do we have our own system of selectivity? Why not German women that were raped by the Soviet troops on a horrifying scale at the end of the Second World War? So what is our own personal selectivity? Second point, the exclusion of the global south, 80% of the world's population in the human rights community. Are we in the north the saviors and the people of the south the victims? Have we made our own effort to include those voices? And finally, the discourse,
you want your money's worth, don't you?
I thought it was going to be succinct. The discourse of is it genocide, is it not genocide? In Rwanda, the Americans denied that it was genocide to justify lack of intervention. In Darfur, civil society mobilized. Colin Powell said, it is genocide, but we're still not going to do anything. Is this a totally misguided way of talking about victim suffering? Sorry.
Okay, and right, that's a symposium to come, no doubt. Okay, I'll take time. There's some hands over here. Can you just show your hands again? That I saw the flash. That gentleman there, and I will take you next. Gentleman with the glasses, yeah. I feel like David Dimble being question time.
Thank you. My name is Ben Stanford. I'm a PhD student in terrorism and human rights. My question is mostly directed to Michael, but it has far wider implications, so please anyone chip in. It's clear that any form of collective action will often face an uphill struggle against the corporate media that share interests with corporations, politicians and so on. If you look at the Hillsborough disaster, the way the Sun reacted then was shameful. The NHS at the moment, the supposedly neutral BBC has chosen to virtually ignore it. Is there any form of collective action we can take to ensure fairness in the media? Because at the moment, the centre ground has been shifted so far to the right, it's almost impossible to even hear about these things.
Thank you. I should refer you to some of my former clients at Occupy. Gentleman at the back, thank you, who I know well, but for everyone else, just identify yourself.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you very much, John. My name is Farshid Aryan. I'm a member of Iran Tribunal trustee, and also been doing cooperation with you as well in organizing a lot of events. But the thing that I just wanted to raise here, first of all, thank you very much for your excellent seminar and the last 2-day presentations. In addition, we have learned a lot. But isn't it time when we said what we do next is that a cooperation between people's tribunals with each other, building a consortium, doing something together, exchanging information, cooperation, building a bigger, sort of, as Mr. Giannoni also mentioned before, to cooperate with each other and to be in connection with each other, to exchange and to be in solidarity with each other. And then we could actually demonstrate ourselves better.
Thank you. I'm going to distribute the questions again, although you've already told me who you want to answer your question, and I am but your servant. So as far as the first question is concerned, that is Payam's question, or questions, selectivity, north-south divide, and what's genocide, Pierre? 30 seconds each.
About selectivity, I will tell you, don't accuse people to do something. If you say, oh, yes, there is selectivity, don't accuse the people doing something and look why other people don't do this struggle with us to enlarge the field and the capacity that we have. And I believe that really it's a choice, because when you speak about the question of Palestine, it's more than 60 years now. And Palestine is, I will tell you, when you look to the Mediterranean Sea, you have two sides of the book. Here you have Europe, there you have the Arab world, and here you have the problem that we have between us, is Palestine. You solve the problem of Israel and Palestine, you solve a lot of the problem that we have between us, between the north of Africa and the European. That's the way that I believe. And to speak about genocide, it's to go all the time, what kind of crime, it's the definition of the crime, it's not to make a selectivity, it's not to make a selectivity into the people, it's to say, when you are confronted in a situation, is to make sure that you go to the point where the crime are committed and what kind of quality of crime are committed. And I believe that you cannot put in the same basket when you are confronted with people suffering by hunger and people aggressed by other people, by army and by this kind of crime. It's two different crimes. I don't say that one is worse of the other. I say it's different.
It's such a big question, Pam. I mean, it really is a subject of a seminar, and I wasn't being flippant. It's a fascinating question. I'm sorry we can't give it the airtime it deserves. Mike, collective action.
Yes, I quickly on that other question, because I feel strongly about selectivity. Well, it's grassroots driven. So there has to be a community. You can't just go out there and say, we'll do the German women on today and someone else tomorrow. There has to be a group that says, we demand answers to these questions. That provides the conscience and the momentum. So there has to be that. Genocide is a very important label. It's not that we're expecting a prosecution as a result. There ought to be. But Israel, we know, just giving you one example, is extremely sensitive. It was very sensitive over the use of the term apartheid, and they do not want that term applied to them, because as a result, if that term gets applied to them, it reverberates around the world. And in fact, it brings more pressure because people disengage. Look at what's happening on the BDS front. So that's why I think it's important. Collectivity. Yeah, forget mainstream media. We're living in a different world. Well, I'm not quite yet, but I still read The Guardian. But there is a different world. The social media, the networking, I've got 5 different, every single day, petitions coming through on my iPad of different issues. And they're successful, some of them, Avaz particularly. That's where the battles are going to be fought.
Absolutely.
So forget the mainstream media, don't even buy it, and certainly don't read it if you do, because you're not going to get change. But most people under the age of, better not mention the exact time, but you know, anybody under 30, the people I know under 30, they're not interested in newspapers, they're not interested in the BBC. Actually, what's happening is they're communicating with each other on a daily, momentary basis, twittering, God knows, that's where it's going to happen. And if you talk to Palestinians, I'm sorry to go back to that, but most of my experience is concerned, the immediacy of social media means a great deal. They can get messages out before the Israelis do. So that's where I think the battle's
And that just, before I bring in Jeffrey on the other question, that brings in the question we had right at the start about education and entertainment. Really engage with the social media. Don't be afraid of it. For mainstream media, they will follow your lead on the social media. Jeffrey, really it's going back to the discussion we had a little earlier about coordination, that sort of thing. Perhaps I could ask you just to comment on that.
But one comment on what Michael said. How many of you are from Europe? Hands up. Europe. Once we have an internet-based automatic voting system, which is not far away, we will be able to vote for the elimination of Strasbourg as the wasteful centre of our money. And we will do it. But it is a prime example of a single issue where the public would all vote one way and will soon be allowed to do so. May it rot soon. Back to the question, because it costs us an unnecessary amount of money. The problem you raise is a problem for every activist group. At the time between an identified objective round which everyone, or the possibility of moving from an identified objective round which everyone can gather easily and move forward, and to the time when there's a diversion of interest, a diverse interest, and the body becomes a talking shop, is something that can happen all too easily. Once you approach the talking shop position, you have to recognize that you may have to compromise in identifying an issue or maybe two around which people can gather in order that their energy may be provided through the leadership of the group and the energy of the people to move forward. You need to be able to compromise, recognizing that some progress is better than none.
Let it be today, Geoffrey.
Okay.
You have everybody.
Okay. I suspect Jeffrey and I might have a disagreement over Strasbourg, but we'll leave that to another day. Now, my memory fails me on other people who were indicating. I think we're another 5 minutes, haven't we, Hamid? Another 5 minutes? Or, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you then. Yeah. I don't think your microphone's working. Is it working? Perhaps you've just got a quiet voice. No, it's not working.
My name is Maria Saruwiwa. I have just a little question to ask. Does genocide apply to actions of multinationals? Yes. Does genocide apply to the actions of multinational companies, particularly multinational companies operating in areas where the governments are weak?
So is that with a question mark at the end of it? Yeah.
The reason why I'm saying this is because of where I come from.
Yes.
I come from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of oil prospecting going on. You all know that when the Gulf of Mexico had the accidental oil spillage, the way the government and the companies dealt with that situation is different from what is happening in the Niger Delta.
Can I push you for your question, though, please, if possible? And your question is?
My question is, does genocide apply only to, does genocide also, can we apply that to the actions of multinational companies?
Mike.
Well, interesting question. I obviously realised by your name what the connection is here, and I followed this particular case. Short answer is yes. And that was the whole point about the mock ecocide trial. It actually said to people out there in the public, what the people we're putting on trial here, because that is the International Criminal Court, is not dealing with states in the dock, it's dealing with individuals. It's about individual responsibility. And it can be a member of a government who's responsible for a policy that has led to, if you like, ecocide was one example, this time genocide. So the perpetrators, individually named, can be members of a government or members of a corporation. That's the answer.
Okay, I see no more hands. I'll take one more question. If there's no more questions, then it's lunch. Of course, Geoffrey, please butt in. Yeah.
I was referring to Strasbourg as the second and wasteful centre of the Parliament, not as the court.
Okay, well, we're friends again then. Okay. If there are no more questions, then I'll call the session to a halt. Well, thank you very much. Can I just thank the panel again, each and every one of them, for their time. And thank you for your amazing questions this morning. They really were questions which deserved even more time, but I'm afraid we have constraints which we have to stick to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, all the members of the panel, for such a wonderful expose. We break now for lunch for 1 hour. Please come back here 10 minutes past 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'll be back to enjoy it.
Thanks, Geoffrey.
Yeah, I think that...